For 10 years, he visited his sister's grave every week. But when the truth about what was buried there finally came out, the entire town couldn't stop crying or shaking in fear. Every Saturday morning, without fail, 28-year-old Daniel would leave his house precisely at 7 a.m. He never spoke to anyone, never made eye contact with neighbors, and always wore the same faded gray coat, regardless of the season. In one hand, he held a single white rose. In the other, a small, antique wooden box with a brass lock, worn down by years of handling. The box was always tightly gripped, as if letting go might unleash something unspeakable. He walked slowly to Hillcrest Cemetery, a quiet, mist-covered graveyard just outside town, an old place no one visited anymore. Locals had started calling it the Forgotten Garden because of the overgrown vines and decaying statues that lined the cracked stone paths. Upon reaching his sister Lily's grave, Daniel would kneel down, place the rose gently against the headstone, and lean forward until his lips were nearly touching the cold marble. He would then whisper something, always the same sentence, no one knew what. But if you listened closely, some said you could hear trembling in his voice, like he was begging. Afterward, he would stand up and walk several steps to an old oak tree just a few feet from the grave. With bare hands, he would dig a small hole, remove the previous week's box, and bury the new one in its place. He never opened the old one. He never looked back. And then he'd leave, face pale, hands shaking, eyes haunted, like he'd just seen something no man should ever witness. The town didn't question him anymore. They only watched from a distance. Because whatever was in those boxes, or whatever he was trying to keep buried, wasn't just grief. It was fear. It started with the wind. A soft rustling at first, like leaves brushing together, or maybe voices carried from far away. But soon, the whispers became clearer. Too clear. Visitors to Hillcrest Cemetery began reporting the same thing. At Lily's grave, the air changed. The temperature would drop. The wind would stop. And then, you'd hear it. Whispers. Faint. Childlike. Repeating something. Over and over. But the moment you tried to listen, they'd vanish, like the grave itself was toying with you. Old Mr. Halbert, the cemetery caretaker for over 30 years, was the first to speak up. That grave, he said in a trembling voice, it ain't right. Graves are supposed to rest. That one, it talks. He refused to mow the grass near it anymore. Claimed he saw something standing there one night. A pale figure in a white dress, barefoot, head tilted, watching him without blinking. Teenagers, curious and reckless, snuck in with their phones at night. They laughed, dared each other to touch the headstone, joked about the ghost girl rumors. One of them didn't come back. His friends found him at sunrise, unconscious by the grave, nails torn and dirt under his fingers, as if he'd been trying to dig. His phone was shattered. When he woke up, he screamed for hours, unable to say a single word. His hair had turned white. After that, even the boldest kids stayed away. Locals started locking their windows at night. Pets refused to walk past the cemetery gates. Church bells nearby rang on their own at midnight. And through it all, Daniel kept coming, week after week, like he knew what was really buried there, and was trying to keep it from waking up. But it was already too late. When Daniel vanished, it was as if he evaporated into thin air. His car was still in the driveway. Dinner, untouched, sat cold on the table. The white rose meant for Lily's grave lay wilted in the kitchen sink. There was no sign of a struggle, but something about the silence inside his house felt wrong. Too still, too heavy. The police got a warrant to search the property. At first, everything seemed normal. A quiet home, clean and plain. A few family photos, medical bills, newspaper clippings. All eerily ordinary until they found the door behind the bookcase in his bedroom. It wasn't locked, just hidden. Behind it was a narrow staircase leading into complete darkness. The officers descended slowly, flashlights trembling in their hands. The air grew colder with every step, and the walls seemed to breathe, moist and pulsing, like they were alive. At the bottom was a small room. No windows, just concrete walls covered in peeling black paint, and dozens of photographs. Every single one was of Lily. But they weren't childhood photos. They were recent, taken from outside windows, behind fences, down long hallways. Blurry, distant, but unmistakably her. In one picture, she was standing behind the bars of what looked like a basement. Her eyes were wide, hollow, her skin pale as bone. Beneath the photo was a note in Daniel's shaky handwriting. "She's still alive, but she's not my sister anymore." The room also contained several recordings, cassette tapes labeled only with dates. The last one was just a week old. When played, all it contained was Lily's voice, whispering something over and over again, barely audible. But when filtered, enhanced, and slowed down, the words were clear. "Don't dig. Don't let them dig." He promised. He promised he wouldn't let them find me. The officers froze. Because the next morning, the town council had approved the request to exhume her grave. The day of the exhumation was gray and heavy with fog. Hillcrest Cemetery, already forgotten by time, felt like a place that was warning people to stay away. But the town couldn't ignore the evidence anymore. Those photos in Daniel's basement, the whispers, the disappearances. Whatever he was hiding, it was time to uncover it. A team of workers arrived just after sunrise. Police, forensics, journalists, too, kept at a distance behind a rusted iron fence. As the digging began, birds scattered from the trees. The air turned still. Even the wind refused to move. When the shovel struck the coffin, it let out a dull, hollow sound. Everyone fell silent. The coffin was lifted with care, though something about it felt wrong. It was too light, as if whatever had once been inside was no longer there, or never had been. When they finally opened it, the crowd gasped. It wasn't a human body. Inside lay a life-size porcelain doll, dressed in Lily's favorite white dress, down to the same tiny embroidered flowers. But the doll's face had no eyes, just stitched X's where they should have been. Its mouth had been sewn shut, and in its stiff, pale hands was a yellowed envelope addressed to whoever dared. A detective opened it, hands trembling. Inside was a note written in smudged ink. "You buried the wrong one, and now she's listening." The horror didn't end there. One of the workers, clearing dirt beneath the coffin, noticed something strange. The soil was loose, hollow. They kept digging, and uncovered something that should not have been there. A tunnel, narrow, hand-dug, leading away from the grave into the darkness beneath the cemetery. No one wanted to go in, but two officers did. They never spoke about what they found, at least not publicly. But one of them quit the force that very night, shaved his head, and was later found muttering to himself at the town fountain. "She's under all of them. All of them. She's everywhere." The tunnel beneath Lily's grave stretched deep into the earth, farther than any human could have dug alone. The walls were jagged, clawed. The deeper you went, the colder it got. Not the cold of stone or damp soil, but something else. A deathly cold. The kind that settles in your bones and whispers to your soul. After what felt like an hour of crawling through darkness, the two officers entered a hidden chamber. No one knows exactly what they saw. The official report was blank, redacted. But one of them, Officer Ellis, left a voicemail for his wife minutes after exiting the tunnel. His voice was barely a whisper. "She's not dead. God help me. She's not human." The chamber walls were covered in symbols, written in blood, old and unrecognizable. And in the center of the room, shackled to a rusted iron bed, was Lily. At least, it looked like Lily. But she hadn't aged a day in 10 years. Her skin was pale as wax. Her eyes were wide open, unblinking. And she was smiling, a slow, inhuman smile that didn't reach her eyes. She began whispering before they even approached. He promised he wouldn't let you come. He promised. When they tried to speak, she only repeated the same phrase, over and over. He made a deal. Now it's your turn. He made a deal. Now it's your turn. Then the lights on their cameras went out. Their radios died. And the whispers weren't just hers anymore. Voices filled the air. Dozens, maybe hundreds, all saying the same thing. She was never meant to leave. What happened next is still a mystery. When the officers finally emerged, they were both covered in dirt and blood, neither theirs nor each other's. One went silent. The other lost his mind. The tunnel was sealed the next day, and the cemetery closed forever. No one talks about Daniel anymore, or Lily, or the other graves that began whispering soon after. But sometimes, just sometimes, people passing by Hillcrest say they hear a soft laugh carried on the wind. A girl's laugh. And then, silence. Closing narration, creepy, plus emotional call to action. Some truths aren't meant to be found. Some graves aren't meant to be opened. And some souls never rest. Would you dare to visit the grave that shouldn't exist? If you enjoyed this terrifying tale, hit that subscribe button. And remember, what's buried doesn't always stay buried. Turn on notifications for more haunting stories every week.